events where we were able to deliver products such as baby items, maternity clothing to the Barrington, Shelburne area. And so that, you know, we're in that position where we're responsible to take care of our neighboring towns and neighbors. So therefore, on such a great scale, yeah, we do need help. We need a new location. We need to be able to provide more system. I want to say provide more supplies, bringing out more sustainability to our individuals that are on Planned Pregnant or with other cases such as parenting. We also do education programs. Reaching single dads, single moms. I'd like to see a male mentor program put in place. However, we do not have the funds for that, so we rely on volunteers. It's a really difficult situation because of the location we're at. It is affordable rent-wise, but it's not appropriate in regards to the challenge of stairs, many stairs. So we are restricted in regards to our barrier of being able to, you know, look at volunteers that would be willing to come in and help be client advocates or even just in support of the center regarding office administration. So yeah, we're really growing, and so the need is there for support from our government and to continue doing what we're doing. And yeah, so do you have any questions?
Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Carol, for coming in. We've seen in grants to organizations over the last couple of years that your organization keeps coming up, and part of the reason that we wanted a presentation is because we don't know how your role came about in the community. Can you explain a little bit more, you know, because I don't think anyone's questioning the mission, your mission and what you're trying to accomplish in the community. It's more of why the province isn't funding some of these things and why that falls now to us to fund some of these things.
It's because we're a Christian organization. We're based on a ministry that we are pro-life. We try to protect the sanctity of life. Therefore, the government unfortunately does not want to support that particular political statement. We are involved in supporting and educating those that are with our unplanned pregnancies, but in the end of the education, we are pro-information, pro-education. So the person can explore, you know, parenting, adoption, and abortion. But those choices are made by the individual and their families. It's not made by us. So I feel as though in regards to this role, we're caught in a fire because we stand on the sanctity of life, so we want to be able to support the opportunity for mom or dad to choose life, but we do not influence that. We do give them that opportunity. Therefore, the government does not want to provide that funding or support to help us. Okay. So therefore, why I'm coming to the municipality of Yarmouth is because we are a great service. We do a lot of great work here in this town and outside of the town. And without the support financially, we're not going to survive. There's only so much fundraising we can do. And, you know, the operation costs. When I was employed and I started this job as executive director on March 16th of 2022, I seen a bank statement, the financial was $31,000. We're now down to $20,000 in 1 year. I have done a lot of work in regards to fundraising to continue the means and the financial support to keep the operating costs of the center. I've started out with a yard sale, then I ended up with a lobster plate fundraiser without the support of a lobster buyer and the Knights of Columbus. That was a huge success. And then we ended up going into the baby bottle campaign. And that's a real big thing, and I'm working to restore relationships with some churches that, I guess, with the previous employee, there was some misunderstanding, miscommunication. They're now participating to give us that support. But again, the funding is, $11,000 in 1 year, and I only have like 48 hours biweekly. And then I have a client services director that works 24 hours biweekly. So we're running on operation costs that would include buying supplies for the babies and families. So yeah, it's a lot.
So if someone chooses abortion, does your program still support that?
Oh, absolutely. We do what we call post-abortion care. We've had women that have actually had abortions when they were teenagers and never dealt with the grief and loss. They moved on with their life, and then later on in life, all of a sudden, they've got some situation there that has occurred with their mental or physical health, and they come to us for support. So we do offer post-abortion care in supporting that. Yeah. We also, I forgot to mention too that we haven't had the opportunity, but I would like to see the opportunity with youth coming in the fall. We would call it Healthy Lifestyle Choices, where we would introduce sexual education and the consequences of sexual infections, and to help them understand the choices that they make. There are consequences. So it's a big undertaking, but I feel that it would be absolutely worth the investment for all of these different services. Yeah.
Councillor Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Carol. I apologize. I do have a number of questions for you.
No problem.
So are you supported financially by Christian organizations?
Yes, by churches.
Okay.
And again, that in itself is only usually annually through the baby bottle campaign. We do have actually we've lost a great donor that was monthly for the last 3 years that have chosen to move on to a new mission. And we have gained a new donor, but we have not yet seen the general monthly donations come in. Yeah.
Our area is becoming much more diverse.
Yes.
And would you support folks of other cultures and other religions?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I have had a wonderful visit, and it was introduced to the settlement officer, Elizabeth Gonzalez, who is working with immigrants to help with the dialect. We are also working with public health and prenatal clinic. We've worked with individuals from Jamaica, from Philippines, and from Mexico. It's been a little bit difficult because of the translation, but now we're getting the support from the hospital to be able to rent a room there so that they can bring in a translator. Yeah.
Okay, and so this is from other communities, but what about other religions? Has anybody approached you from other religions for support?
Absolutely. In fact, there's individuals that we say atheists or non-religious, they believe in spiritual, they're more spiritual. Yes, we have no restriction on any person's belief or faith. We love all, and we walk with them in their crisis. We don't judge them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And the other question I have is, have you, since now you've mentioned that you were all the way down to Bridgewater and Digby, are you approaching other municipalities like Digby and Clare and the Bridgewater for support as well?
I have, and I've written letters out asking for financial support. And from Digby, we received a nice donation, but again, it's not big enough. It helps, but it's still, the cost is still quite expensive. And now with the cost on, the wildfires, I'm a little bit concerned from the support in Barrington because there's a lot of people that's been impacted by this horrible crisis. Yeah,
Thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Councillor Lauren Cushing. Lights coming on, but nobody's home.
Thinks it's working.
I'll shut mine off and then.
Deputy Warden and Nick, turn yours off, and there you go, Councillor Lauren Cushing.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for your presentation. And I'm very aware of the Tri-County Pregnancy because I am a member of the Knights of Columbus who have supported your organization over the years for many years, matter of fact, and you guys do great work. And we've also been with St. Ambrose Church with the baby bottle campaign, which has been very successful on our end.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's a program that you run that is very delicate, and some people just don't want to get involved with it. But just keep up the good work and keep. I don't know if you put a budget together and whatnot, and just make a presentation at the grant application time that we have, and we go from there. And I think if you do that with every municipality from Digby right to Bridgewater, I think you'll probably get support.
Yes.
And thank you for helping out in the Barrington fire.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Sherry Hurlbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Carol, for coming in. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Sherry.
I'm not sure if you were aware, so you did submit a grant application to us, and I just confirmed that the letters were only sent out yesterday, so I'm not sure if you were aware that we gave you $3,000. Now, I know your ask was much larger than that, but we had over 40, I think over 50 applications, so through that, but I know that the letters just went out, or Jenny was telling me the letters only went out yesterday, so that will be of, some assistance to you. Obviously never, it's never enough, but I think too, maybe, along with here's a word of advice I'll give you, because you're doing a presentation to us and sending those applications to other municipalities, it might be worth your while to actually ask them, I don't know how their processes work, but ask them if you would be, if you could give a presentation to the councils that you have sent grant applications so that they know what you do and they understand, the importance of the project maybe.
Yes.
But, yeah, thank you. Keep up the work.
Thank you.
Deputy Warden.
Yes, thank you, and the work you do is very, very important. I believe you did go to 100 Gods, is that correct?
I did, yes.
And you were successful at one?
No,
Not yet?
sorry, yes, under the other executive director, yes.
Okay, right.
It was a few years ago.
Right,
yeah.
I recall that. So you're almost ready to be able to reapply again, probably?
Yes.
I think it's a 3-year. But in any event, I was impressed with what your organization did then, and so am I now. And to Councillor Hurlbert's point, I think that will work. I think the in-person ask for us is always good, especially the first time.
Yes.
While we're getting to learn what the organization does. And thank you for all that care. There's lots of deserving young people out there that need the hand up and the help. So I very much appreciate
Absolutely,
it. Thank you.
absolutely. It is a privilege. It really is to be in this type of work, to be able to provide not just only material support, but education support, spiritual support. You're walking with that person in their time of need. It is their crisis. It's the fear of the unknown. It's a loss. It's a grief. No matter which way they turn, they have to have enough time and support in, giving the opportunity to be a part of that, and then to see the rewards, the fruit of the labor. It's incredible. Yeah, it really
And
is.
certainly the science supports the fact that, you know, that intervention, that help with all of the products, the, you know, the nutrition, you know, the moral support and all those types of things.
Yes.
Help in the long-term outcomes, and that's very, very important for mother, child, and fathers and all the rest. So thank you again.
Thank you, thank you.
Councillor Lauren Cushing.
I'd like to make one,
Oh, it's working.
I'd just like to make one more comment about your organization. As mentioned, I'm a member of the Knights of Columbus, and several years ago, there was a young lady who chose to have her child, and it was probably, I forget, I think the young fellow, he was probably 12 or 13 years old, had come and made a presentation to Knights of Columbus and thanking his mother for choosing to have him as a child, right? So that was pretty, it was pretty emotional sort of thing, right? So it was very good work that you guys do. So I just wanted to make that one point, because I kind of forgot about it until Councillor Cunningham brought it up, so.
Thank
Yes, and don't
you.
forget the 100 guys.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Carol, there's no other microphones flashing. One thing I wanted to mention is you know that, as Councillor Hurlbert had mentioned, that your organization did receive a grant from the municipality of Yarmouth, but one thing that we did find during the grant application process, there was a lot of new people that asked, and council did ask and made motions to have presentations by different groups, and I can't recall if yours was one of them, but I think it was.
Okay.
So, yeah, so thank you very much for coming in.
Well, thank you for having me here. It's a privilege.
Well, we appreciate all that you do for the community and unborn babies and mums and dads out there and caregivers, and thank you
Yes.
very much. It's very eye-opening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry.
All right, moving on to item 6.2. I regretted when we were doing the additions and deletions to the agenda. I received a note yesterday via email at 10:13 that Brenda LeGrand could not come in today to make the presentation, and she's going to be rescheduled. So my apologies to council for not noting that, because we had a lot of additions. And that one just slipped my mind. And I did confirm with Jenny again earlier before the meeting started that she wasn't coming in. So my apologies for that. Item number 7.1 for action, 7.1.1, RCMP retroactive costs. Madam CEO?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So council, in your package is your copy of a letter the municipality of Barrington sent to the Attorney General and the Minister of Justice regarding the retroactive RCMP costs. And we've talked about this file a couple of times here at council, but I have it in your package for action just to get a sense of any direction that you might want to go in with respect to this letter. If you want to bring the issue forward directly under signature of the warden. Some of the issues that we've navigated as we've worked with Justice on this file is the challenge is getting detailed information from the Department of Justice with respect to our contract. So our contract is under the provincial policing contract, which means it's the province of Nova Scotia that's under contract with the Government of Canada for the provision of services. And so we receive our invoice from the province for our policing services. When we receive those invoices, it's a one-line invoice. There's no information about what goes into that invoice. So for example, when we get the first invoice of any fiscal year, there's no additional information that indicates what the contract or the invoice was from the federal government and the formula used to arrive at our number. And we're in receipt of a little bit of information that the province was trying to be proactive when they realized that the contract was being negotiated and there would be retroactivity, and that there may be some dollars set aside to pay an invoice to the federal government. But we don't know if that's true, we don't know how much, if there is, and we don't know what portion would be from the services that the municipality of Yarmouth pays. So, I guess what I'm saying is, it's worth our while to write a letter and continue to drive home the point that, municipalities were not at the table for the conversation with the federal government to understand the local impacts to the federal government's decision to pass on the retroactive costs. But in addition to that, I think there are things we can do to improve our relationship with justice in terms of contract administration and an acceptable level of detail with respect to what we're paying for.
Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I totally concur with our CAO. I support what Barrington has done, and I recommend that we follow suit and we write a similar type of letter asking for more information. I know FCM has been very much involved, and NSFM has followed suit, and it's been all quiet on the Western Front, as my dad used to say. And so I would like to make that a motion that we forward a letter to the same group as Barrington, stating our perspective on the matter and saying that we'd like to hear more from Justice.
The motion on the floor, do I have a seconder? Second by Councillor Lauren Cushion. Discussion, Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to the CAO. Can you just kind of clarify for me a little bit? So we're writing this to the federal government to express our concerns about, or is it to express our concerns about the retro, or to provide more understanding about what we're paying for?
So the letter would actually go to the Attorney General and the Minister of Justice in Nova Scotia, because our contract is with them and their contract is with the federal government. So it's, I guess I want to be clear, the province has worked very hard to advocate to have the federal government pay the retroactive costs. They've participated with the FCM in the conversation, so it was the federal government who made the decision. But I think the challenge in our relationship with the provincial government is we weren't at the table, we weren't asked to provide any submissions to the conversation. If it hadn't been for the FCM and in Nova Scotia, the NSFM, I don't know how the municipal perspective would have been tabled or would have been voiced. And then, like I said, through the process of these conversations, it's become clear that it's reasonable to ask for a more detailed level of information from the province when we're getting our invoices for policing costs.
Okay. Because my understanding is that the federal government has sent out they know the numbers, do they not? I believe they know the numbers and provided those to the provincial government.
That's correct, Councillor Hilton. And in a recent meeting, all the CAOs had with Justice, we asked for those numbers. And we were told that because the province was reviewing the invoice from the federal government and they were taking their opportunity to challenge the invoice, they were not comfortable sharing the numbers with us.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Councillor Durkee.
I just want to add that I believe that this would be forward to the regular council meeting for approval.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Councillor Hilton's point, so our letter is asking, we're just looking for a little bit more clarity as to what has happened. We want more clarity, we want a little bit more transparency as to how the numbers work as they come down to us. Is that what we're writing the letter for?
That and to support the letter recently submitted by the municipality of Barrington.
Any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item 7.1.2, Tri-County Women's Center Annual General Meeting. You have that in your package. The annual general meeting this year is Tuesday, June 20th of 2023 at 5:30. I do believe that there's a PAC meeting that day, so
There is, but it was at,
Deputy Warden?
there is, but it's at 7 PM, so I only know that I scheduled it in RSVP'd, so I intend to attend and then come to PAC later on.
Any more? I also plan to attend. I'm not part of the Planning Advisory Committee, so I will be there, and it was an invitation to all council, so if you can make it, it's something that I feel very strongly about. They do a lot of work, along with a lot of other organizations in our community, just like we heard from the presentation from Carol. They're not affiliated, I don't believe. I should have asked that question, but I didn't, but there's at least two of us. Okay, so there's going to be at least two of us. Was there a requirement to notify them that we're attending? Okay. But I think I'll send off an email just to let them know I'll be there. Thank you, council. Item 7.1.3, three-year cost share agreement for subdivision streets. Madam CEO?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So council, in your package is a 3-year contract with the province of Nova Scotia. If you recall, every year in the fall, the municipality receives correspondence and has the opportunity to nominate improvements to J-class roads. And so the agreement that's in your package basically is an umbrella agreement so that if projects get awarded, we don't have to negotiate an agreement. This covers that work and that function for a 3-year period. It's the same agreement that we have signed in the past, and it's their standard agreement with all municipalities. So it's before you, and my recommendation is that we sign it.
What is the pleasure of council? Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make a motion that we approve the 3-year cost share agreement to be forwarded to regular council for approval.
Okay, motion on the floor. I have a seconder, seconded by Councillor Daniel Allen. Discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item 7.1.4, invitation Lion Clubs International Charter Night 2023.
So just, Mr. Chair, if I could, I just want to point out that RSVP is required for this because there's a meal involved, as well as an opportunity to declare any dietary restrictions for anybody who might choose to attend.
That was the meeting that I could not attend, correct? I think I sent an email to one of them. So Deputy Warden, I do believe that you had mentioned that you're going to be going?
I did, yep.
So I guess maybe a motion. Councillor Durkee, your microphone's on. Did you wish to speak?
Sorry.
So that is going to be for, what is the date?
So I think it's the deputy warden attending on your behalf.
Yeah, okay. So there'd be no need to do a motion forwarded to regular council for that. All right, so the deputy warden will be attending that. Thank you, Deputy Warden. I can't be everywhere at the same time. All right, item 7.2, items for information, the NSFM 12-month notice letter, 722, missing or damaged road signs, 723, provincial representative for the Joint Police Advisory Committee, and 724, Hope Annual General Meeting invitation. Those items are there for information. Deputy Warden?
Yeah, the missing or damaged road sign seems to come up. We have spoken with Public Works, formerly TIR, on several occasions, so maybe we can add that to the list of things maybe to talk about, when, you know, if they come in, but just, and again, I'm not here to badger anybody. I know that people have, or all the government departments have, you know, certainly have financial restraints and priorities and all those types of things, but I was contacted by a resident today about the beginning part of the 340 and signs missing and all those pieces. So in any event, just perhaps we should make note of that, although to talk about in the future again.
Thank you. Moving on, item number 8, old business, 8.1, Coastal Protection Act delay. Counselor Patty Durkee, this was deferred from the last council meeting that you were unable, that you send your regrets to, so it is here today. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll start out by saying that the Coastal Protection Act is extremely important to our community. And there has been delay for some reason, and we don't really know why, in providing the municipalities or providing everybody with the regulations or getting it through the legislature. Attached in your package is a letter from the Ecology Action Center asking for a letter of support to move this forward so we get to find out about the regulations. We do not know what kind of impact this is going to have on our own development department. Although I'm happy to see that in the letter from NSFM, it does talk about the Coastal Protection Act and brings about a number of questions because we don't have any answer to them. And so the Ecology Action Center is asking us to send a letter to the provincial government to move forward. And I believe our CAO would like to add a couple of comments to this as well.
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Durkee. An opportunity to provide feedback and engage. First of all, let me back up. The development of the regulations for this act have been put through a rigor of municipal engagement unlike anything I've ever seen before. The individuals who work for the province who are developing recommendations for regulations for government are genuinely listening to the impacts that this will have on municipal government moving forward, trying to find a way to, on balance, address the environmental stewardship aspects that we all value, and deliver the program framework in a way that it's manageable. And it's been a struggle. It's definitely been a struggle. A number of months ago, another survey was sent to municipalities for feedback. I forwarded that to the municipal planner for comment and for feedback, who presented their work to the Planning Advisory Committee last month. The Planning Advisory Committee asked me to take a look at the material and apply a financial lens to the work. So take a look at the questions and kind of the thoughts around a possible direction and understand the impact to the municipality of Yarmouth from a financial perspective, which at the end of the day comes down to our main revenue source, which is taxation. So I'm working with staff right now to try to understand how many assessment accounts would be impacted, understand the assessed value of those assessment accounts, try to understand what process implications there could be in the development office in terms of moving applications for development on those properties that are involved. Try to understand, essentially what's the financial impact or quantify the impact. So I've told the PAC that I would work on that for them, and I would recommend that council kind of hold off on responding until the material comes to them from the PAC with that information.
I support the CAO's recommendation that we delay until we get the information that we need responding. However, if that doesn't come in the next month or two, I would, at that point, I would like to have it back on the agenda to take a look at it and consider supporting the Ecology Action Center's request.
Yeah, what we have to do, Councillor, is just send me an email, because it doesn't come up on the agenda in the next month or two.
Thank you. I just, a couple of things I'd like to add is there was a discussion about this at the last board meeting of NSFM, and some major concerns of why it was delayed and why it continues to be delayed. And some of the feedback from some of the other board members is that there are individuals on the opposite side who do not want these regulations, who have oceanfront property, but you would think that, they would be happy to know that things are, in future at least, because we do know that there are buildings close to the edge and they're going to be dropping off pretty soon if if they're not careful. And basically what I'm saying is the regulations would mean that there would be greater setbacks from the end of the property near the ocean.
Councillor Lauren Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Yes, I sat on that committee, and it was very well involved. And as Councillor Durkee was saying, the setbacks are so important to protect anything from falling into the ocean for the coastal erosion and whatnot. And we have a prime example sitting down on Falls Harbor right now. If the Coastal Protection Act was in place, we probably wouldn't be dealing with this particular subject. Thank you.
All right, so I see no more discussion on this item. I will probably expect to see an email come from you, Councillor, when a couple months have passed in regarding this, and we'll bring her back. All right, item 8.2, draft legislation. There's always a few words that seem to tie my tongue, and this is one of them. Draft legislative agenda for 2023-2024. You all have that in your package, Madam CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So earlier in the year, Council approved their legislative agenda, and through conversations and work we've been doing, there's been a few changes to it. So I've got it before you again. Highlighted in yellow are the changes, and so I'm looking for recommendation to Council just to adopt the amended agenda.
Councillor Sherry Hurlbert.
I'll make the recommendation, make a motion to recommend to regular council the updated legislative agenda 2023-2024 as attached.
Okay, motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Second by Councillor Daniel Allen. Any discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item 8.3, the Deputy Warden has declared a conflict and he's stepping away from the table. All right, everyone, as we all know, that we had a presentation by the Meadowfield School Playground Committee. It involved a few teachers from there, and we all heard on there that there was an ask for supporting the playground. Now, if you all remember correctly, that they were looking for different funding partners, and also what they received from different funding partners, then they were going to go to the provincial government to ask them, because the more money that they had in the bank, the more money that they may be able to receive from the provincial government. So this subject is on the council agenda today on request of Deputy Warden, who unfortunately declared a conflict. So there was an ask of $75,000. What is the pleasure of council? Councillor Lauren Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Yes, that meeting we had, a joint meeting with the town of Yarmouth on this subject, you know, and it was good to sit down and have a discussion over it. And the ask from to support this playground was quite high. But after I stepped away, give some thought about it, and consider the number of children who attend Meadowfields from a large portion of our municipality in the town, not only during the school year, but after the school year, during the summer, when the playgrounds are there for use. And I understand completely that the difficulty in supporting a program like this is it should fall into the Department of Education's hands to provide funding for playgrounds, because play space is a very important part of education in itself. I just want to bounce back to my previous history of when I was working for the Actually, I was doing a snowplow contract for a number of schools, and the head fellow at the school board at that time was very disappointed that the school province was putting in gymnasiums in schools. You know, and I just ruled him, I didn't say too much because I wanted the contract, but anyway. So here we are now, that yes, the province should be paying for playground equipment at schools. There's no question about it. And I don't know if we can, if by motion of council, that we can have our CAO send a letter off to the province saying that, you know, we don't mind helping out or do it politically right, but the province should be responsible to put playground equipment as in schools. And I think the playground committee, you know, I understand what they're trying to do, and they need some financial support first so they can go after the province for grants and whatnot, which is a good thing. But I found $75K that they were asking for is a little rich. But I say, after doing some soul searching on this and how we supported the splash park, and which turned out they did a fabulous job on their fundraising, I'd like to recommend that we, dear me, I'd like to recommend that we provide this Meadowfield School playground with $50,000. And I think some of this money can come from our parkland dedication. I'm not quite sure how much we can, I think it's around 35 that we have available to do something like this with. Correct me if I'm wrong. And the other 15 could come from an operating budget that we have reserves for it. So that's I'd like to make a motion that we provide the Meadowfield School program with a $50,000 grant.
Okay, a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Nick Hilton. I'll start the discussion on that. As you all know, we received an email from the CEO that, as per our policy, 50% of the parkland funds can be distributed to community groups, which this would qualify. So that would mean that the balance available for distribution as of right now would be $35,814. But there was a motion on the floor for $50,000, so I have a question for the CAO. Where would that money come from? Would that be coming from the operating reserves, Madam CEO?
That's the way the motion reads, Mr. Chair, is that the 50,000 is funded, 35 from the amount on hand for distribution and 15 from operating reserves.
Yeah, I missed the operating. I heard him say something about could possibly be. So, yeah, that was my question. Councillor Hurlbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't at the joint meeting with the town that we had, so I have a couple of questions, and I'm not sure who I can direct them at, but I'm just going to throw them out. Is this playground for P to 6 all the time, or is only one age group using the playground as a whole? So I guess I know in some elementary schools, they divide, and one playground is for this group, like P to 3, and the other playground is for 4, 5, and 6. I just would want to ensure that the playground is going to be used by all students all the time. That's one question. And if we don't have the answer, I'm okay with that, but.
Madam CEO is looking through the grant application right now, and I don't recall them mentioning that it was just for one specific group. It was
Okay.
just for playground for the community.
Okay.
Because they were also mentioned that the playground was used not only during school hours, but on weekends, and where it's close proximity to the town and the surrounding areas of the municipality district of Yarmouth. There is a lot of people that did use that, but right now there's no equipment for anybody to use.
Okay, so I will. The application is, our CIO says the application is silent. Okay, so I'm going to move forward, and I'm probably going to sound like the wet blanket of the group, but I need to have this on record that here are my concerns. If we take $35,000 from our parkland dedication, does that mean that we have no parkland money for anybody else until 2024? That's correct. Okay. Thank you. Second, how much time do I have? You can cut me off whenever you feel like it.
Technically, 5 minutes, but...
Okay, I think I can do it. So Meadowfields, we also have Port Maitland School, Carleton School, and Plymouth, where a majority of our residents reside. So I really feel like we need to think about this through the larger lens of all of our residents in the municipality, and I understand that there are playgrounds at some of those other schools, but I do frequent Carleton School, and I would say that their playground is lacking in equipment as well, and that probably doesn't meet the standard. So that would be one of my concerns. The other concern would be that we're using all $35,000 of our parkland dedication, and we would not be able to use that for any other organization that would ask us this year. That, for me, would mean that I would have to vote against this motion as it stands. And I also feel strongly that if we are going to be offering a community playground, that it needs to be available to all of our community all of the time. And having a playground of $50,000 of our contribution at a school that between 8 and 5 and September to the end of June is not available for anyone other than the students at that school. And so for all of those reasons, I can't support this motion.
Councillor Nick Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Lauren, for putting the motion on the floor. I'm in support of the motion for several reasons. You know, I know that it's located at a school, but I feel that the times that it's unavailable, it's because the kids are in school and are in school in every area. So I'm not 100% sure if it's not available as it needs to be. So I know that they have $100,000. It's taken them a year to get to $100,000. It's an over a $400,000 project. They can't apply to the province until they get 75% of that. There's all kinds of things we could look at, is if it's the right size, if it's not, if it's the right size, or, are they asking too much, all those things. There's a significant number of our kids there. The town expressed their concerns at the meeting. They are still on board with supporting it for, a fairly reasonable amount, or I feel that's the direction that they were going, and that they're going to support it even though it's in our area. They supported Yes in Town for $30,000. There was no ask to us. They pay for other playgrounds. There was no ask to us. I feel like this is a significant ask by a community group that's doing the work, and we don't have to maintain it afterwards. I feel like we play a role in making this happen, and I don't think it happens unless we put a significant amount forth. So even if we decrease it to a number that, say, half that, that's still a significant amount of the placemaking fund or parkland fund that's not available. So no matter where the funds come from, I think we need to step up and provide a significant number. I'm okay with the motion that's on the floor. If there's an ask that comes later, we haven't had an ask in 2 years related to parkland, so we'll find money for the next one, but this needs to happen. There's no playground this year. Without a significant investment, there's no playground next year, and you're talking generations of kids that are going without playing outside, which means they're just playing inside on their phones even more.
Councillor Lauren Cushing.
Did you have your hand up first, Patty? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Warden. A couple of things I'd like to add to it. Number one, my understanding that the playground will be available not only during school year, but during the summer also. That's my understanding, number one. Number two, this playground is going to be, I think, the only accessible playground in our area. Number three, I always like looking at the lifespan of any type of project. And I would say this, I was involved with playgrounds with the town when I worked there. And I would say this lifespan for this particular playground would be 15 to 20 years. 20 years the very max, and depending on how often it's used, and the weather, of course, and any vandalism and all this other stuff that happens. So, you know, like I say, one of the selling points for me was the accessibility to this playground. Thank you.
Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to say I'm having some difficulty with this, and I'll explain why. As a former educator, play out in the yard is just as important as school academics, quite frankly, because that's where kids really develop social skills. And the fact that the Ministry of Education is not supporting this financially at the moment, it saddens me, because to me, having a playground is really quite educational. And in my experience, the departments of education have built them and should maintain them. One of the biggest parts of our budget is to put money, $2 million, I believe, I'm offhand, $2 million we're giving to Department of Education. Why aren't they using some of that money for our school? Honestly, that just blows me away. And why can't they just take some of that money and use it? So that's why I'm having some difficulty with this. That being said, I do understand that it's a necessity for kids, and like Councillor Hilton said, we have to find ways of keeping kids off phones. It's the amount that I'm not sure of, and like Councillor Hurlbert has pointed out, if we, first of all, I guess let me go back a step. Who owns the property that the school is sitting on? Does the province own the property? Do we own the property? And that's where I'm having a little bit of difficulty. If the province owns the property, then we are building, putting money, a significant amount of money towards, on a piece of property that doesn't belong to us. That being said, what about getting back to Councillor Hurlbert, came out correct that time, has mentioned about the other schools, and not even just schools. What about other neighborhoods in our community? Yarmouth County is really spread out, or municipality of the District of Yarmouth, and we have places for people to go in Port Maitland, in Pickneys Point, in Malvern, in Carleton. So if we're prepared to put in this amount of money for something at one school, then we have to be prepared to put to think about the future and donating, because people are going to ask for it. In fact, I got asked for dog duty bags, a dog duty bag station in Port Maitland, and my thought is, well, this isn't our property, and how are if we're putting money in or we're doing something like that, then how do we maintain that? So my recommendation was to put up signs to start with, and then put in a grant request so that we don't have to maintain it. And so I understand we wouldn't have to maintain it, but volunteer organizations change over time. So who is going to maintain? If the people change in this volunteer organization, then who's going to continue to maintain it for the next 15 to 20 years? Because it sounds like the Department of Education is not prepared to do that. So that would be a concern of mine. It's not that I don't support trying to do something for kids. I'm 100% behind that. I think we don't have enough things for kids to do in our community, but we need to make sure that this is accessible for everybody. Thank you.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Councillor Durkee 100%. I said it at the meeting, the joint meeting, and I'll say it here, I believe this is a provincial issue. I also realize we have a great group of volunteers trying to raise money. The students are trying to raise money. It's something that it's going to be needed sooner rather than later. I will not be supporting $50,000. I believe that's quite high for where I would want to be. Like Councillor Durkee's point, it's just, to me, it's all wrong. We are going to be building on a property that we don't own, that is owned by the province, the school. I mean, at what point, it's almost a form of downloading as far as I'm concerned. So at what point will, now it's a playground, you know, where could it possibly lead to? I mean, are we going to end up replacing doors when it comes time? I know that sounds crazy and a little dumb, but, you know, we're going to be putting things on a school property that we're not going to own, we're not going to maintain. Do I think the kids need it? I 100% believe the kids need it. I think some of the best lessons I ever learned were in the playground. The only problem I have is the fact that I don't believe it should fall on our shoulders to build it. I hate to say that, but I just don't believe it. But I am also willing to put some money towards it because I know it's a necessity right now, but we're talking about accessibility and things like that, and we have a playground that's right up the hill here at the Rotary Center, and we are going through an accessibility review if we haven't already gone through it, so there's chances we're going to have to invest money in our own playground in order to bring that up to accessibility standards. To Councillor Hilton's point, we weren't asked for any of the playgrounds in town, and rightfully so, because they were in town. I understand that the town of Yarmouth, and we had a great meeting with them, they are willing to put money in Meadowfields, but also 50% of the students or thereabouts come from the town. So I completely understand that. They had a great point, just nobody seemed to want to settle on a number at that meeting, and I agree that I would definitely be willing to match anything that the town is putting in. I don't know where the town is at. They were at a decent number, around 30 or 35. I would be willing to match that. Where the funding would come from, again, I hate to leave our parkland dedication dry, so I guess finding the money would be an issue, but that's where, me as a councillor, that's where I would be. Thanks.
Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and, you know, I've heard people say we are building, we're not building anything, like this community group is building it, and it is up to us if we want to support it. To Councillor to Councillor Allen's, it is downloading, it is. I completely agree with that, but under the current structure, we're not changing that. So the question is, how long are you going to allow no playground to be at one of the biggest schools in Yarmouth County? To Sherry's point, I think it is for half the school. I don't believe it's for the whole school, and there will be another ask in the future, just like there will be an ask from Carleton, there will be an ask from Port Maitland. Those asks are going to come, and until someone addresses that downloading issue, which we can do via a letter, it's not going to change. The playground at the Rotary Center is, you know, it's not, it's there for, maybe Maple Grove uses it, but there's not 200 kids from elementary school within walking distance of that. This is the playground that the majority of kids are going to use. I was at the joint meeting as well, and one of the things that the town said is they, you know, if they're supporting, well, I don't know if they said it or that's what I interpreted, we're not going to look very good if we support less than they do in the schools, not even in their municipality. So even if they're at 30, 35,000, us at 50 is reasonable, because that doesn't even put them at halfway. Even with us in the town, they're not even going to be halfway. Not even, I'd say 40%. So they got a long way to go. So if you're only raising $100,000 a year, if that, and that was probably when people came on board in a hurry, and the municipality is, given their money, and they got $250,000 to go, without municipal government to make up any more of that, it's going to be a long, hard road.
Councillor Hurlbert, then I'll speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate everyone's comments, and I still struggle with the fact that, you know, we are 1 week past passing our budget, and if this motion passed, we would be taking all of our parkland dedication money for one project. We have 7 districts at all that I feel need to be evaluated and figure out how we can use, and we did have a discussion during the budget process on how, you know, to have a future meeting on how we can find places within our districts to support the residents who live there on a yearly, 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week, 365 days of the year. And, you know, to Councillor Hilton's point about he doesn't think that this playground at Meadowfields will be servicing all of the students, that in and of itself, for me, like, the $35,000, one, would be a reason I'm not voting for this motion, but to know that there is a playground that is costing hundreds of thousands of dollars that isn't being used by all students, and that we will maybe be asked in the future. And now that this is out there, that yes, we might be giving a school $50,000 for a playground, it will mean that other playgrounds and other schools and other organizations are going to come to us. And right now, we have, if this passed today, we would have no money to give any of them. And to Councillor Allen's point, we have a Rotary Center, we have a playground there that, in my opinion, from an accessibility point of view, is not satisfactory. It wasn't part of the accessibility audit because we were only talking about built infrastructure, Councillor Allen, so the playground wasn't up for discussion. But if I thought our money on playgrounds needed to be spent, I would say it needs to be on land that is accessible and available, not accessible, but available and accessible to our residents all the time.
I was going to speak, but I'm going to hold off my comments until I hear what you have to say. Go ahead, Councillor Ott.
So I won't say too much more about the importance of it, although you clearly know where I stand, but if it's about the location of the money, or where the money's coming from, or the budget year, we know that they're not going to finish this project this year, and we could make an amendment to the motion to do $25,000 from Parkland this year and $25,000 from Parkland next year. They would get that within a 12-month period, and it would probably be in the same thing, but that means you'll go another school year with no playground. So I'm not making the motion, I'm just telling you, if it's about the location of the money, we can take it from operating, we can take 25 from operating and 25 from Parkland. It shouldn't be about the location of the money, it should be about the importance of the playground.
Madam CEO?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a point of clarity. Available for distribution right now on hand is $35,814.50. There's no guarantee that that will be how much you will have next year. So under the current motion for $50,000, 70% is coming from Parkland dedication and 30% from operating reserves. So if you wanted to take a look at your total number, to Councillor Hilton's point, but maintain that ratio or change that ratio, those are all your options in terms of how you could approach this conversation. And you can do that by way of amendment.
And that was going to be my comment about amending, because if this motion falls from the floor, we cannot make another motion for a lesser amount. It's under the...
That would be a material change.
Would it be a material change? But I think it'd be a little bit cleaner if council decided, with all the discussion that I've heard around the table, that either, number one, they amend their formula or amend the amount, or both, or whatever you want to do. But as it sits now, I see council's pretty split. There's one thing that Councillor Hilton said to me that I was actually on the fence until he said, well, the kids spending less time on their cell phones, and that's something that we see that's, in my opinion, that's very problematic for the development of kids. And I would be in favor of the motion as it sits, but I don't know where council's head is. I don't know if you want to call for the question, or I don't know if you want to call to make an amendment to the main motion on the floor. So it's up to you. Counselor Hilton?
Just one more comment, like, it sounds like everyone knows where they stand, but if you're against it, and it's because of the money, then someone should make an amendment to that motion. If you're against it because you don't want to spend the money on the playground, then vote no. But I'm willing to support it as it sits currently, but I'm also willing to support it if there's someone that wants to change how that funding model would work.
Counselor Cushing?
Can we not go through the vote as the motion was made and then make another motion afterwards for a lesser amount? Or do we have to amend?
So I think that's what the warden was getting at. The way Robert's rules works, which is what we work under, in order to bring an item that was defeated by way of motion back to the table, there has to be a material difference. So the difference would have to
material
be significant
difference.
enough that it's material. It's, so you couldn't just say, okay, let's do 45,000. You know what I mean? So if there's an appetite to support the project, but the overall total and the funds that it's coming from are where council would like to sharpen their pencil, my recommendation would be that we do that by way of amendment to the main motion.
Okay. Well, I'm willing to amend that motion then to stay at the 50,000, but to access the money in a different form. Is that correct?
Yeah, to be more
Okay.
specific, there was mention of $25,000 coming from the parkland and the remaining coming from operating. It's whatever figure you decide. And another point before you finish your motion, Counselor, you can amend an amendment if you wish, only two. So,
If you're not willing, I'll make that amendment. 25 from operating, 25 from...
That's correct.
so you're making a motion to amend the main motion to take $25,000 from parkland and the remaining coming from operating, correct?
Correct.
Okay, amendment to the main motion on the floor, second by Councillor Nick Hilton. Any more discussion on any discussion on the amendment on the floor? Councillor Allen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If the amendment gets defeated, is it possible to make another amendment?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, the amendment on the floor. Is any more discussion on the amendment? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Could you just raise hand?
Opposed?
Yeah. Could you do by way of show of
Okay,
hands?
show of
Mr.
hands.
Chair?
All those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your right hand. Opposed? Motion, the amendment to the main motion was defeated. Now we're going back to the main motion. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Because I think this is a project, and I've said it before, I'm not willing to invest the $50,000. I'd like to make an amendment to the main motion that we do a donation of $30,000, $15,000 coming from our parkland dedication, and $15,000 from operating. Is it operating, would operating be operating reserves? Would that be where the money should flow?
Yeah.
I'd like to make that motion.
Okay, amendment to the main motion is on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Patty Durkee. Any discussion on the amendment on the main motion?
On the amendment.
Yes, that's what I said, on the amendment of the main motion.
So we're still dealing with an amendment, not an amended main motion?
Correct.
Right, okay.
That's what I did say. I did say amendment at the start, correct. Anyway, any more discussion on the amendment of the main motion? Councillor Hurlbert.
I just would like clarity. So the motion, the amendment to the motion is 30,000, right? 15 and 15. Okay, thank you.
Any discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, signify by saying aye and raising your right hand. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? A vote of 4-2. The amendment has passed. Now back to the main motion. Pardon me? All right, yes, would you like your names recorded? Counselor Nick Hilton and Counselor Lauren Cushion. All right, back to the main motion. Any more discussion on the main motion?
You should probably clarify what it is, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, so to clarify, the main motion now reads as amended, that there's $30,000 total, $15,000 from Parkland and $15,000 from operating. So, Counselor Hilton.
I'm kind of at a loss for words, because I do feel that you're going to see the town support this playground, one that's not in their district, more than what we have just done. So I'm going to vote yes for the motion, because I feel that it's really a requirement to the growth of our adolescent community. So I just know that it's going to be a couple more years before they see anything there.
Counselor Sherry Hurlbert.
Thank you very much. To Councillor Hilton's comment about the town supporting more than us, I have felt, and I've been conflicted in the last 3 years as a municipal councillor, that I feel that there are many times that it's us versus them. And, you know, we were ready to go into, you know, consolidation talks, and for whatever reason, that didn't work out. And, you know, our meeting schedules are such that we're doing this today, but then the town turns around, you know, in a day, a week, a month from now, before we can do ours, or they do ours before us. And so it's, you know, oh, look, Modi didn't give as much as we did, or the town saying, oh, or we're saying, oh, the town didn't give as much as we did. You know, it's this back and forth. And I think that we as a municipality have to do what we feel is best. And I understand that, you know, the town will probably be contributing something, but we shouldn't be basing our decisions on what a municipality outside of our district has or will maybe do. And if they go to their council table and decide that they're going to put a dollar figure larger than ours, then we have to be okay with that, or not okay with that, because I think there are people who won't be okay with that. But I have to be okay with the decisions I make because they're the best for the municipality of the District of Yarmouth, not based on second guessing what another neighboring municipality may or may not do.
Councillor Patty Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, this is a controversial scenario, and my thought is, you know, yes, I absolutely want to support the playground and the school, but I also want for us to be able to consider other areas as well to provide the services needed for kids in other districts. So that's why I'm in favor of the present amended motion that's on the floor. And it's unfortunate that it probably won't happen this year, because $400,000 is a lot of money for a playground, and I know that people have just given a considerable amount of money to the splash park, which we also supported. And kudos to the volunteer group that are working so hard. So following the decisions made at this motion, I would like to make another motion following this.
Councillor Cushing.
I have to agree with Councillor Hurlbert. My purpose as being a councillor for the municipality of Yarmouth is the number one priority would be to support municipality of Yarmouth projects or fundraiser, what I'm trying to think of, a word I'm trying to think, but for projects. And I thought the Meadowfield School project is within the municipality, and I believe with a number of children that attend there, and the main thing was the accessibility of the playground, and that's why I had went for the 50,000. So, and you know, nothing against the town. Town can do whatever they wish. We collaborate with the town on a number of other items, and you know, it's okay to agree to disagree at times, but let's not say they give this much, we give this much, we gave more than them. That's foolishness. We don't need that kind of stuff in our life.
Councillor Hilton.
Thank you. And just to clarify my comment, it's not that they may give more, it's that they're willing to put that much into something in our municipality. You know, we put more into any partnership we have with them, we put more because we have a higher population, a higher, I can't remember the metric off the top of my head, but we always put more, and now we're putting the same, so they recognize the importance of the probably around a $30,000 investment, and we recognize the importance, but we weren't willing to put a little bit more. That was the comment. The town can do what they want to do. It's that even with $60,000, they're at 160, and they have $250,000 more to go. It's just going to be a significant. It's not going to be 1 year. It's going to be multiple years before they have what they need. And again, thank you, Lauren, for your comments.
All right, no more discussion on the amended motion. Is everyone clear what we're voting on? It's $30,000 total, $15,000 from parkland dedication and the other 15 from operating reserves. That's the amended motion that's on the floor. So hearing no more discussion, signify by saying aye and raising your right hand. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? A vote of 5 to 1. Motion is carried. Councillor Cushing, would you like your name recorded? Okay, thank you very much, Council. Councillor, Deputy Warden? Oh, sorry. Councillor Patty Durkee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I would like to make a motion that we recommend to regular council writing a letter to the Minister of Education requesting that they support the project at the Meadowfield School and come in beyond what I think that, I'm sorry, the CAO, through you to the CAO, there was a percentage that they needed to meet to get before they, correct? A percentage that the volunteer committee needed to achieve before the province would commit?
Well, Councillor Hilton shared, metric 75% of the total budget before the province would lean in. I'm not sure where that's coming from because there are several funding streams from the province that this project could qualify for.
Okay, so my motion should read that the Department of Education should consider funding the development of a playground at Meadowfield School.
A motion on the floor. I have a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushion. Discussion. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's exactly where I was going, Councillor Durkee. I was going to come to this afterwards. I also think that we should make mention of the fact that we are donating the amount of money we're putting in and the amount of money that we contribute to Department of Education every year. And I'd also, I'm not sure how we go about doing this, I would also like to CC the town in this so that they know where we are and what, hopefully they'll get on board with us as far as writing a letter to Department of Education in support of the project and asking them to step up to the plate and just take their part. And the MLA as well. I don't know if that has to be amended in the motion or if the person that made the motion can.
No, that can be, it can be just a friendly amendment, plus this is going to regular council, so you can make that comment as well.
Yes. Yes, please.
Any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. All right, wait for the deputy warden to return to his chair. And actually, I'm going to step away for this item because I really need to visit the washroom. Could you please take over for item 8.4? It's just
I was wondering the same thing, like, what could it possibly be?
Council, 8.4, a briefing note, Remo bylaw, and perhaps I could call on our CAO to make some comments to start us off.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So council, in your package is a briefing note outlining the very unusual and inconsistent experience we've had with attaining ministerial approval on our regional emergency management bylaw. So I've detailed for you kind of the course of events that unfolded, and at the end of the day, we do require ministerial approval for the bylaw. That is not in hand. And as I've shared, based on conversations with the municipal solicitor, best course of action is to rescind the motions for first and second reading and direct me to take us back to the beginning of the process.
So what we've got in the document, if folks could turn an eye to the doc that's been circulated, there's a recommendation at the bottom that outlines essentially what the CAO's asked for verbally. So I will call on Councillor Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To move this forward to regular council, I'd like to make a motion that whereas procedural inconsistencies have prevented receipt of ministerial approval on Remo bylaw 036-21, therefore be it resolved that the municipality of the District of Yarmouth rescind the motions of June 23rd, 2021 and July 14th, 2021, approving first and second reading of Remo bylaw 036-21, and that staff, we request that staff prepare for first reading of the Remo bylaw at the June 28th, 2023 council meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Durkee. We've got a seconder in Councillor Allen. Any additional conversation or discussion about this item? Being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Council. I'll return the chair to the other Mr. Cunningham, the warden.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Moving on, item number 9, new business, 9.1, draft revisions fees policy F-044-02. Madam CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in your package, council, is proposed amendments to the fees policy that take into account a couple of things. One is the effect of the change of decisions you made when you approved your budget earlier this month. And then the other is around market rates for certain fees, certain services we provide, like photocopies in terms of copying municipal documents, as well as legal costs for preparing certain forms and recording certain instruments with relation to loans we provide. So I can go through them one by one, but they are in your package highlighted in yellow for your review and consideration.
Councillor Durkee, your microphone's on. Do you wish to speak?
No, thank you.
Yeah,
Deputy
I
Warden.
guess in the interest of time, given that this will be forwarded to regular council and we'll have an opportunity to look at it between now and then, I'd move that we forward for approval of fees policy F-044-02 to regular council.
Motion on the floor. I have a seconder, seconded by Councillor Sherry Hurlbert. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item 9.2, Yarmouth Airport lobster exports. Deputy Warden Trevor Cunningham.
Yeah, probably a week or two ago now. I can't just remember which date I read it on, but it was in the CBC news feed, and it was concerning lobster exports, and there were some folks that were upset about the lack of air cargo capacity for all shippers to basically in Nova Scotia to have access to foreign markets. So that could be China, it could be Europe, it could be the United States. But long story short, there was certainly some commentary from in the paper from the MP for the South Shore, the Conservative MP, and I just thought it was interesting that if there isn't enough volume for all lobster exporters to have access to the market, basically my understanding from reading the article is that, you know, people buy space, and those that don't have space to ship can't ship. So there are a whole series of folks that may not have access, the same access that other people have paid for through the airlines to export the product. So having said that, I think we should write a letter to the MP for the South Shore, also our local MP and our local MLAs from this edge of the, or from Southwest Nova, and just make them aware that we do have an airport, and that if it were upgraded, it would be able to serve that need to export lobster, seafood products, and anything else, and provide an even playing field for all businesses in our area, in our region, and provincially maybe even. So I'll make that a motion.
So you're making that a motion to move that forward to regular council? Your motion on the floor? Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Lauren Cushion. Discussion? Councillor Cushion.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Thank you, Deputy Warden Cunningham, for bringing this subject up. It's been a hot topic since I've been councillor, and it was always felt that by some people that, oh, well, we don't have a big enough airport to fly lobsters from here to China. We don't have to fly them to China. We get the northeastern seaboard. I do know there was a need for shipping lobsters to either Toronto or Montreal to fill up cargo to go to China or Europe. Lastly, a number of years ago, there was a local lobster buyer here actually in my district, who was trying to ship lobsters to Europe, and as Councillor Cunningham mentioned, that you have to buy space on a cargo plane in order to do that. But unfortunately, the larger companies were buying empty spaces, not allowing for somebody else to ship lobsters on planes. So that was some of the problems from years ago, and I don't know if it's still going on, but you know, it's a great opportunity for us to explore, you know, not around the world, but to northeastern United States, to Toronto, Montreal, other areas that could handle bigger consumption. Because Halifax Airport is, as I mentioned, there's larger companies who buy up empty space just to prevent others from taking their spot.
Councillor Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I totally support this motion. We had a nice conversation about that at FCM. But I also need to make the comment that it is time, it is more than time for the federal and provincial governments, again, to step up to support our airport. Under the present circumstances and what has just happened with the fires in the community and what they're predicting could continue in the future, we need to have support from the other levels of government to make sure we have a highly functioning airport to support even just emergency services. Thank you.
Councillor Allen.
I don't know how she's reading my mind, but she's on it today.
That's scary.
I agree 100%, Councillor Durkee. It's long overdue. If the last 2 to 3 weeks haven't showed how important the airport is to Southwest Nova Scotia, nothing will. I'm going to be in support of the motion. I'm not exactly sure if we are experts on lobster exports. And I'm a lobster fisherman, and I don't know if we are exactly experts on lobster exports. I do know how the cargo, that they buy cargo. I'm not sure what we'd have to do. I think we've visited this. Planes have to come in carrying cargo to make it feasible for someone to bring them in and ship out, The idea of going to the federal government, for me, about this is 100% I agree. I hope at some point they could export lobsters, but just the fact that our airport needs to be seen and it needs to be seen by the government, needs to be seen by the feds, needs to be seen by the province. And I believe that Southwest Nova is starting to notice our airport. I believe our partners, our neighboring communities in Barrington and Shelburne and Argyle are really starting to take notice of just how important it is. Unfortunately, it took wildfires, you know, we can't say enough about the people that are dealing with that. And anyway, I don't want to get into that because it's just devastating. But it just stresses the importance. You're seeing people now raise the question of, should the Nova Scotia government be buying their own water bombers? You know, I think that's a great idea. But they're going to need a place to refuel, and Yarmouth is going to be one of them. We're seeing it. This isn't the first year we've had fires. We've had them over the last 2 or 3. It seems to it's starting to become a common occurrence with environmental issues. So agreed 100%. We can't wait. Now's the time. We should be jumping on the feds, jumping on the province. They should be taking notice to help us spruce things up.
Deputy Warden.
Well, being a politician, I'm going to upstage Councillor Allen, and I'm going to say that I agree with Patty Durkee on that one, 110%. So anyway, what I'll say is I put this item on the agenda for discussion some time ago, and it was really before we had the unfortunate, I guess, occurrences in Nova Scotia around the wildfires. But a point well taken, probably is better and more timely to broaden the motion. So I mean, I made the motion, I know it was seconded, but I think we just changed the wording to include certainly our MP and the MP from the South Shore. I think we make note of that seafood piece that he would already be aware of, and copy the MLAs from the area premier and the PMO as well, or the Prime Minister's office about this, and just outlining all of those factors, that there are seafood exports, but there are also life flights, there are rescues for fishermen, there are obviously the wildfire piece, which we knew about, but we weren't really able to quantify just how critical those pieces are. And the state of the airport, we all know, is not where it needs to be. So perhaps if our CAO could draft a letter and we could look at that along with our warden and forward it to next council, we can talk about the details then. But I think that's more in keeping with the flavor and really a better place to be. So thank you, everybody.
Okay, there's amendment on the main motion. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Patty Durkee. Discussion, Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And of course, I'm in support of everything that we're talking about. I live next to the airport. You know, truly unfortunate what went on last week, but it was quite the air show. Planes from all over Canada, really, and all over the U.S. I guess my question is to the chair. You know, you're the chair of the International Airport Corporation. You know, we're sending this letter on behalf of Modi, but on behalf of an airport that's owned by 3 partners. Are we in our lane on this one?
I would, CAO.
So a couple of responses to that great question, Councillor Hilton. So I think if we pull in the letter that we recently supported a request from the Airport Corporation for their funding task force, they're standing up, and if we carbon copy the other 2 owners of the airport, I think probably we'll have that piece looked after from a protocol perspective.
Question being called on the amendment on the main motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. All right, back to the main motion. Before I call for the question on the main motion, I would want to point out, as Councillor Nick Hilton had mentioned, that I am the chairman of the Airport Corporation, and the CEO did mention about the task force that we're recently embarking on with the Airport Board. Anything we can do to raise attention to the great and valuable asset that we have out here is certainly going to help us in regards to whatever the airport board and the task force does. As we all know, there was concerns about no signed contract between the municipal partners that own the airport, and that's in a motion that we're going to get that done. But unfortunately, it takes a crisis in our community to really draw attention to how important an asset is, even though it's been hard to keep this asset going and quote-unquote right-sizing the airport. One thing that I am going to comment about is it's funny during crisis that people talk about that, and I'm going to have to say this word, Facebook. There seems to be a lot of experts on there, but no one really willing to put their foot forward. They talk about need this, need that. Well, it's very hard when trying to operate an airport with 3 municipal units when our other partners, the feds and the province, don't help us out to fund this, and putting up roadblocks and the amount of funding that we could receive, like ACAP funding. You need to be 302 certified, which we're currently not. We're only 301 certified, which means we can have charter flights, not scheduled air flights that come into this. So I'm in support of the motion. Anything that we can do as a municipality to raise awareness and keep pushing along. People like Rick Perkins that wrote this letter, and our other MP in Southwest Nova, MP Christy Entremont. Anything we can do to raise awareness and possibility to get the funding or just a little bit of nudge is certainly beneficial to all of us here in Southwest Nova. Any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Item 9.3, moving projects forward. Councillor Sherry Hurlbert. Yes, that's right. Can't read my own writing. Item 9.4, FCM conference update. Councillor Hurlbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Myself, along with Councillor Hilton, Deputy Warden Cunningham, and Councillor Durkee attended Federation of Canadian Municipalities Conference the end of May, and you guys wasn't just me who, I guess I should have said to you guys, yeah, make sure you chime in here. But I have a couple of things. The FCM, there were over 2,500 attendees, and 1,500 of those were delegates who were able to vote on resolutions, and FCM passed 3 resolutions. The first one, establishing an urgent intergovernmental platform on mental health. The second was a new growth framework for Canadian municipalities, and the third, taking urgent action needed to address the crisis of homelessness. So all 3 very important and timely topics for us as a municipality, and and federally as well. One of the sessions I attended was on equity. It was called Your Equity Journey, and I made copious amounts of notes, and some of these things I think, will be great for when we start moving forward our committee, the committee, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Citizen Advisory, yes, committee. So one of the things that stood out to me, they said, we don't take this on because it's easy, we take it on because it's hard. And we know that this work that we're going to have to do moving forward is hard. And that quote really stuck out for me. And they were talking about any municipality who has a coordinator within that realm. And it was really interesting because I knew that we were going to be, moving forward with hiring, a part-time or a half-time person, to be part of that, coordination effort. And one of the comments from one of the panel members said that they should be sitting closely to senior management, on those levels, because it really is about everything that we do as a municipality. And I know that that's why, to CAO Brooks's, comments during the budget process, that was why we're hiring this person, to make sure that, we're kind of on track with everything that we do. And they just said, trust the relationships. Trust the relationships that we can have. Trust that we will have better relationships moving forward. Trust that all of those things will happen if we do the hard work. And so I have a whole page of notes that when we get the committee together, we will, work forward. But it was really exciting to hear, that there are we sat at tables that were kind of like, where are you in your diversity, equity, and inclusion journey? And it was, if you sit at this table if you're doing nothing, sit at this table if you're doing a little bit, sit at this table. And so we got to sit with people who were kind of in the same situation as us. And then we got to have a chat about how other municipalities who are, maybe not on the same journey, not as far along in the journey, or who are farther along. And so it was really great to hear all of the things that other municipalities are doing, but it was really exciting to know that we are moving it forward as well. So the whole conference in and of itself was great. There's there were a lot of, networking that happened and meeting people, and I could go on and on about all of the, things that we attended. I think we went from, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning most days until 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, and if you left early, well, you missed out on some things. Yeah, we won't talk about those. So, it was just really great to network with, all of the people across the country, and, large municipalities. We got to meet the acting mayor of Toronto, and they're going through an election process later this month, so it was great to, see her and meet her, and it was a wonderful learning opportunity, and at the end of the weekend, exhausted and many steps put on our pedometers. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Deputy Warden?
Yeah, just quickly, I agree with what Councillor Hurlbert said. I did send the CAO a photo I took from a screenshot from one of the sort of larger sessions, and just amazing. And I think this support's out there in the community for infrastructure just in general, but definitely 75% of people across Canada support the federal government spending more than it does now to help municipalities retrofit existing infrastructure and build new infrastructure, and that is very, very important. Obviously, with the Mariner Center, I think we've got a lot of support on that. So that's all true. It's great, the green inclusive communities. I think that's what the gas tax is now called. That's a pretty big chunk of money that we get every year from the federal government. It does provided some funding for the sidewalk in Port Maitland and in Hebron Dayton, which has been great, and others along the way. But more is always better, and really infrastructure, in terms of, for towns, obviously it's about roads and bridges more, but for us it may be about active transportation, it may be about wastewater, all those things that people need. It may be about readying the community for increased subdivision development, any of those types of things. Transit, could be any of those things depending on the size of the municipality. The one thing that I did take away in that was sort of a core message is about housing, and it's not just about, although it's an important facet certainly of the issue, it's not just about homelessness. The issue is really about all segments of housing. The housing issue is, and it's about getting all kinds of housing built, because there's a lot of people across Canada, including our own community, struggling to get into a home, get into an apartment. There is a lack of supply. So anything we can do in terms of, in Toronto, I did a tour, and it's a very different community, obviously, but they're building infrastructure to actually, and working with developers to actually put housing in place. Now, it's not the taxpayer that's funding the actual building of the buildings. Those would be private dollars, but it is certainly the municipality, as we are working along with the community to put in place good legislation, and also maybe even providing some funding for like water, sewer, all those types of things over the long term to develop the community. And that's not going to happen tomorrow, because it is big dollars, and we'll have to think about it strategically, but it is something to think about. So it's about the supply. If you can put up a house, maybe somebody puts up a house, maybe somebody moves into that house, that moves out an apartment, that frees up an apartment for somebody that needs a place to live. So in any event, that's sort of one of the big messages. I kind of was thinking that, but I heard it over and over again. So it's a big issue. It's not just about building low-income housing, although that can be part of the mix. So thanks.
Councillor Hilton?
No, it's Durkee.
No, I thought I seen your microphone flashing. Councillor Durkee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for your support today, councillors. I find FCM always inspiring. You get to learn so many new things from so many different people from across the province and across the country. And many of them are going through the same hardships that we are going through. When you think of what's happening with the fires now, we've been hearing about those things in Alberta for years, and now we have a better understanding of what they've been going through. Being in Toronto again, because I lived there for many years, it was very interesting to see the growth and one of, yes, it's the developers building the buildings, but it's the municipalities making it easy for that to happen. Again, Canada is growing, and it's not just us that's going through growing pains in Nova Scotia, and we know that, we want to increase our population to 2 million. Well, other areas are doing the same thing, and I think what's happening is that we're not ready for growth that fast, even though it is happening, and that's where the housing issue is coming through. One of the interesting workshops or talks that I attended was about women in politics, and thankfully, there were a lot of very inspiring women there. I know a number of women in Nova Scotia have gone through some pretty difficult times. And I think there's a lot of people, and not just women, but anybody, minority backgrounds and LGBTQ, and I apologize because I don't have the whole proper acronym. Have a challenge, and people were willing to discuss those things. And I think a lot of people do not understand that women are criticized for so many different things that you don't understand. What clothing people wear, and they're made fun of. And I honestly, I have to say, I don't think the men in our community understand that. But there were a lot of very inspiring comments, and I'm really happy because we have, as I mentioned, there are people in Nova Scotia, women in Nova Scotia, who are considering not running because of some of the negativity that's gone on with regard to code of conduct. But they are rethinking that because of the inspiration received in that workshop. Thank you.
I just have one question for those who attended. How's sleeping arrangements in the airport on the benches?
Miserable.
For those of you who don't know, they stayed late and attended a baseball game. They didn't think it was right that they charged the municipality for accommodations for another night, so they stayed in an airport on the lovely seating arrangements they have in there, so kudos to you guys. Moving on, any more on the NSFM conference update? None. Item 9.5, Pride Month. Councillor Hurlbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to read a little bit that I wrote up earlier. This month across Canada, we recognize June as Pride Month. It's a time where we celebrate the diversity of LGBTQ2S+ communities while acknowledging their history, the hardships that they have endured, and the progress that they have made. A time to raise awareness about the rise in discrimination, hate, and violence against the LGBTQ2S+, and I think that there are probably more acronyms along there, and I do apologize, both locally and globally. There are only 34 of 195 countries that have marriage equality, and it's criminal to be too LGBTQS+ in over 130 countries with punishments up to and including the death penalty. And that might seem like that's a long way, far away from home, but currently in New Brunswick, there's an educational policy review that could see the elimination of gender-neutral washrooms in schools, among other things. So, it's a slippery slope. June 1st, the Southwest Nova Pride Association raised the progress flag here at the Modi Building, and I want to sincerely apologize for not attending the event, missing the event. There was some miscommunication on how council received that notice, and I talked to a member of the Pride Association, and they assured me that we will be individual councillors and will be on their mailing list for any upcoming events. And so with Pride Month, I just challenge you and everyone who's listening and watching to educate ourselves on the history of the LGBTQ2S+ communities in Canada and their unique identity, expression, and achievements. And we can benefit from learning about these lived experiences. With our combined efforts, we can make a difference. And, you know, this, for me, this goes right back to, you know, our diversity, equity, and inclusion, you know, work that we will be doing. So hopefully we won't miss any future events. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more on that? Hearing none. Item 9.6, the other added item. Councillor Cushing.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I brought up about the camper trailer down at Falls Harbor. I've been receiving several concerns, not only from the citizens of District 6, but from other surrounding areas too, about how was this allowed to happen. Basically, I told them that, I mentioned that as long as he followed all the regulations, there's not much we can do. But saying that, I don't know if all the regulations have been followed or not. So I would like to make a motion for our council to write DNR, I guess it's DNRR now, I guess, fisheries, and especially environment, to ask what process and permission were required to have this trailer rest on top of the beachhead. Coastal Protection Act that Councilor Durgay had brought forward and whatnot, I think would have dealt with this pretty quickly. And the reason why I'm saying this, how did all those beach rocks get up on the beach in the first place? Through storms. Most of it's through storms. They had to come from somewhere. And sure, it's only going to be a seasonal thing, but it's a commercial venture that will be undertaken there. And sure, if we have storms again, more beach rocks, the beach could be altered again. So will the individuals be allowed to go on top of the beach again, level it off, put gravel down, and put the trailer there? So it's very concerning to me and to a lot of citizens that use Johns Cove and Falls Harbor en route to the lighthouse, our main destination, that something like this is allowed to happen. As mentioned, I don't know what we can do as a municipality, but I like I mentioned on my motion, if Modi can send a letter off to DNR, Fisheries, Environment, just to follow up what they can do and what they can't do, and hopefully this coastal protection legislation goes through. So, thank you.
So there's a motion to recommend to regular council. I don't have a seconder on that. Is there a seconder on the motion? I'll ask again, is there a seconded by Councillor Nick Hilton? Is there any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Deputy Warden?
Just the motion, I think the intent is good, but what I'd recommend is that we communicate that there's a concern among residents, rather than asking them specifically, because it's so open-ended specifically how they allowed it type thing, because obviously things were allowed and permits were gotten under, as far as I know. I shouldn't say obviously, but I mean it's there, so, and it hasn't been removed. So I think it's probably better to alert them to the concern in the community that because that much we know for a fact, there is concern in the community. Councillor Cushing's indicated that. I think that would be perhaps a better tact, just saying that just notifying them that there is a considerable amount of concern about the about the property and how it's being used in the community.
Any more discussion on the motion on the floor? Counselor Allen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this is a tough one for me. I completely understand where the residents are coming from, and I understand, I've been out by, I've seen it. I don't know what his intentions are with the property. All I know is someone has bought the property and has put a trailer on their said property. So beyond our regulations, as far as our, development of a property and things like that and our policies, I'm really not sure if we're kind of getting out of our lane here by going over and above. I'm not saying there shouldn't be questions asked, but I don't know I'm struggling with whether that is up to us because now it's going to seem like we're singling out one in particular resident, and I guess now every time someone doesn't like something that goes up in their neighborhood, we're going to have a responsibility if they ask us to go through this whole process again. So I am a little concerned with that. I do agree with Councillor Cushion. Everyone has their own opinion. Unfortunately, I don't find it pretty. I'm not sure how they ended up there. I don't know. But it's their property. If they came and got the proper permits from us, if they need a permit to put a trailer on their property, I think that's the extent of I hate to say it, I don't know where, once we go above and beyond this, where we land moving forward with any property at that point. Because I would say it's, once we stick our nose, and I'm going to say that, once we stick our nose into this one, then we're going to have an obligation to stick our nose into any other request we get similar to this.
Deputy Warden?
So I'm thinking along, and that was sort of my intent, thinking along the lines of Councillor Allen. I think that if we were to, rather than saying something wrong's been done, look into it, because I'm not certain that's the case or not. I'm assuming I may be wrong, that all the permits were gotten and all that type of thing. I can't imagine that. I think probably our CO's been aware of it. I think our staff's done due diligence around our responsibility. But to your point, there's a number of government agencies responsible for that. But it's just like any other property. If you develop a property under that in a permissible way, and it says a right, we got to be really careful about saying, well, it's somehow wrong, even though it might not be everybody's cup of tea, that type of thing. But what I would say is, I think if you have a lot of people in a community that are saying, we've got some issues with this or whatever, we'd like you to look into it, I think we can just simply, because we know what it's all about, so we don't need to inform our staff. In terms of where it is and that type of thing, they're aware. But certainly the other levels of government, federal and provincial, may not be, and our staff knows who they might write. Just saying that there's a high level of concern. It might hasten, for instance, the passage of the Coastal Protection Act or something like that. I don't know where that will go, but we've often written other levels of government saying there's a concern in the community without placing judgment on the individual property, the individual that's done the development or whatever might be the case. Because if somebody's done nothing wrong, I think it's or played by the rules or whatever it is, whatever exists, and it might not be to everybody's liking. But that's our job's not our job's legislative. It's not certainly management, and that's kind of a management thing. So unless somebody's got something in particular that they know that's been a rule that's been broken or something like that, it's tough for us to deal with. So what I'd ask probably is that the motion be amended. I could support it then, certainly, just simply indicating that there's a concern in the community.
So are you making that an amendment, Deputy Warden?
I will, I'll make a motion that the main motion be amended to reflect the fact that, you know, it's really about community concern, rather than...
There you go, you're
Yeah,
back.
I'll just move that we make an amendment to the motion that simply reflects community concern rather than any other issue about the property.
Okay, amendment to the main motion's on the floor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Patty Durkee. Discussion on the amendment.
You, because I haven't had a chance to speak yet, just state the main motion for me, please. Even though I seconded it.
There's, there you go.
It was moved by Councillor Cushion, seconded by Councillor Nick Hilton, to recommend to regular council to send a letter to the Department of Natural Resources and Renewables, Department of Fisheries, and Department of Environment to find out the process for allowing the RV to stand up on the property.
So, I think personally, I feel, this is a property like no other. It has a lot of emotional attachment to everyone in the area, and there was concerns when the RV was moved in. It was very used by a number of the public. So I feel like we spend a lot of time at PAC and here talking about riparian buffer, and really this was the concern that they're bringing forth, probably because they don't like it, but to make sure that the trailer was put there in an allowance with all the policies that are out there. So I feel like it's okay to ask the question to make sure that the residents done what they need to do to protect the beachhead. So I can support it either way, as long as in the end we have the answers to say that everything's been followed. And if they have, then I have no issue with what they've done, even though maybe as a resident I'm not happy.
Councillor Durkee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councillor Cushing, for bringing this forward. I know that there are a lot of people very upset about the situation, and I think we've already done our due diligence as far as the municipality is concerned as to whether or not that this was allowable according to our permits. I think the question we're looking at is, have all these other organizations, the provincial government organizations, are they all aware that this is happening? And because sometimes we know that nothing gets done by them unless someone points it out. And if some of the residents have gone directly to them, we don't know whether they have or they have not. And if they haven't, so they may not know that this trailer is there, or they may not know whether or not, they would know, once they know the trailer's there, they're going to know whether it meets the bylaws or not. And so that would be my concern, is that it is possible that these three organizations may not know that this is a concern. So I believe, to me, that the amendment points that out, and then it's up to them to do their due diligence and correct it or not.
Councillor Cushion, then me. Sorry, I missed. Councillor Cushion.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Again, the purpose of my motion was to identify or let these other provincial departments know that there's something going on down at Falls Harbor, and have they followed all the regulations. Yes, my understanding, they have followed the regulations as far as we're concerned, but I think it's our responsibility, our due diligence, to let the other provincial departments know that there's an RV down there, and is it following all the regulations that are needed to put one there. I can't see why that's going to be a big problem asking that.
Councillor Hurlbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the CAO, can you just give a brief overview as to how that RV being on that property is not going against any municipal bylaws that we have in place, and what we have done to ensure that they're not breaking any of our rules, please?
Sure, so I wasn't around, so I'm going to give a very brief summary of the history lesson. The warden was the chair of the PAC at the time that recreational vehicles were dealt with extensively through community consultation, but it's my understanding there are certain zones within the municipality where an individual can park an RV in a framework that we call as of right, as the deputy warden said. That means the person can just put it there, they don't need a development permit, they don't need a building permit, they can just park it there. And it meets the definition for that use as long as it stays on wheels, but it can only stay there for 60 consecutive days. So from an enforcement perspective, if the municipality was interested in levying charges under the MPS and LUB, we would have to be able to prove that the RV was there continuously longer than 60 consecutive days, which means we would have to have surveillance 24/7 for 61 days to prove that it didn't move. And then to resolve the issue, all the owner has to do is hook it on, take it off, and bring it back on. So, you know, from our perspective, it meets the MPS and the LUB, both technically and through the spirit. I've heard the same concerns from the community, and I guess I would agree that I'm not certain anything wrong has happened. It's just with the narrative today about development happening in an appropriate distance from the yellow line and in an appropriate distance from a water course and all those things, people understand given the size of the lot, it was surprising that that would be there and it would meet all of the requirements. So I think if I understand the spirit of the motion, it's just to, you know, pass along to those agencies. I think I'll do it at the staff level because it's not a political issue. It's kind of, you know, a technical issue. You know, that, hey, just, you know, we're hearing these things. You may or may not be hearing them as well. And, you know, any information you can share with us that help us understand, you know, what you may or may not have done would be helpful, and kind of leave it at that.
Councillor Hilton.
Quick question through you to the CAO. You mentioned the yellow line, so does that mean you're going to ask Department of Transportation as well?
I think we should if we're going to include the agencies listed, just because I know that there are regulations with respect to the center line.
Perfect, thank you.
I want to make a comment. Back when the MPS and LUB was amended back in 2011, and I'm really starting to date myself, the previous chair of the PAC stepped aside, and I received the responsibility of chairing that meeting when we had a whole bunch of people, and this room was full. The foyer was full, and there was people outside about when we were talking about travel trailers on private property. So the rules that we have worked, to my knowledge, right up until now, until there's one that was gone a piece of property as of right. Back then, we decided that we weren't going to limit the amount of trailers that are going on the lot. There's one there. Unfortunately, I'm under the, I shouldn't say unfortunately, I'm under the guise of, if we have our municipal MPS and LUB, and if there's none of our laws broken, then it should be referred to our MP or MLA. We shouldn't be taking it upon ourselves, because it's like the guy with the potato chip. You give one to one, you have to do it for everybody. And I've held by that. I personally have not received any concerns about the property in question. I have received concerns about properties all across the municipality of the District of Yarmouth, right from North Kemp to Brazil Lake, you name it. And what I've been doing is I've been referring them to the MLA, and I'm going to stick by that. So any motion that's currently on the floor, I cannot support. So there's an amendment on the main motion on the floor. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Nay. A vote of 5 to 2, motion is carried. Go back to the main motion that's on the floor. Any more discussion on the main motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Nay. Councilor Allen, would you like your name recorded? And so would I. Thank you, council. Let's move to regular council. That's it for our regular meeting. We need to move into camera for 5 items that fall under the MGA Act. Yeah, we need a motion to move into camera. Moved by Councilor Allen. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councilor Patty Durkee. I don't know if you're stretching or... Motion to go into camera. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously.